Hey, what's up everyone? We're working on the ML350 replacing upper control arms. Let's get started. I want to get straight to the removal process of the upper control arm. I'm going to start on the passenger side. I'm using a 21 metric wrench and a T45 Torx to secure the stud of the ball joint. Two reasons I'm replacing the upper control arm. One, I'm replacing the struts. Two, if you notice, the dust boot on the ball joint is torn. Once the nut's loose, I suggest to leave the nut on the stud of the ball joint, holding onto a few threads. Use a hammer and hit the side of the knuckle until upper control arm loosens up. I'm going to use my 21 metric wrench and my T45 Torx socket on my ratchet to remove the nut from the ball joint. Be careful not to put your hand on top of the upper control arm. Most upper control arms on the Mercedes Benz has tension. Be aware and be careful, as you will notice the upper control arm's tension. I'm going to demonstrate the resistance on the upper control arm. This indicates that the bushings on the upper control arms are still in pretty good shape. However, we're still going to replace the upper control arm. In order to gain access to the nut of the bolt that secures the upper control arm, we need to remove the recycled air cover. I couldn't get a good camera shot for this next scene. However, you will notice that I'm pointing towards the area where the nut is located on the side of the strut tower. This is the location of the other nut and stud for the upper control arm, towards the front area of the engine. You will notice that I placed a ratchet with a socket to hold on to the head of the bolt that secures the upper control arm, and I'm using a size 16 socket. Remember the nut at the strut tower towards the front of the engine? Well, I'm using also a 16 wrench to hold on to that nut while I use the ratchet to unscrew the bolt. I bet you're wondering why remove the strut first. This will make it convenient to remove the upper control arm. My reason to do it in this manner, just in case someone didn't have to replace the strut but only wanted to replace the upper control arm, and I wanted to show that this was possible. Once the nut's already fully removed, then now we can take the stud out. To remove the other bolt, I'm going to use my 16 metric wrench on the head of the bolt. There's less clearance between the head of the bolt and the strut. And of course, using the ratchet with the 16 metric socket to remove the nut on the other side. I'm using the weight of the upper control arm to hold on to the wrench while I remove the nut on the opposite side of that bolt. Let's remove the last bolt. Now I can remove the upper control arm. I'm ready to install the new one. Before I install the upper control arm, I want to demonstrate and show you that the arm has a letter R printed onto the upper control arm to let you know it's for the passenger side. The upper control arm is already in place. Now we're ready to install the bolts. Now that the upper control arm is already in place, then I wanted to give you another camera shot. If you remember the bolt and the nut that's on the side of the strut tower where the recycled air cover is at, I just wanted to give you a better view of it so you can kind of get a better understanding. Now we're going to move on to the front one. So remember, we also have to install the nut for the front area of that upper control arm bolt. When installing upper control arms on most Mercedes Benz, tighten up the bolts in this upper control arm position as seen on the video. This will create the tension needed for the upper control arm. I'm going to tighten up one side of the upper control arm and then the other side. I'm going to use a pry bar and place it in the coils of the strut. This will help me push down the upper control arm and keep it in place. Be patient, it can be tricky. You will notice I needed more leverage to push down the upper control arm, so I had to reposition the pry bar. Let's install the nut, and then now we can let go of the upper control arm. And of course, tighten up the nut. Let's move on to the driver's side. This is an indication of worn out bushings on the upper control arm. You can also hear the way it sounds, and exactly it sounds like that when you're going through bumps. If you're wondering, the bolts are loose. They're not. I have not loosened the bolts. You will notice that I removed the inner fender plastic cover. There is no need to remove the fender cover. This is the location for the nut that tightens up the upper control arm bolt. The nut has a red stripe, and you will need a 16 metric wrench. It's difficult to get a wrench on that nut, but it is possible. The nut for the other bolt of the upper control arm is towards the back area on the other side of the strut tower by the firewall. Be patient, this was difficult. The upper control arms will have an L for left or R for right. It's the same procedure to replace the driver's side upper control arm. Good luck with the repairs. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video. I was trying to make a quick video pertaining to replacing the upper control arms for the ML350. There are a lot of good videos out there that replace the struts, so those are good videos and I didn't want to focus on that. So if you have any questions, please write them down below. If you have any comments, please write them down below. I'll answer them as quickly as possible. Also, please hit the like button for me, it really helps me out, and don't forget to subscribe. See ya.